Well, hey guys, good evening. It is John C. Morley here, serial entrepreneur. It's always great to be with you on the Inspirations for Your Life show. It's Monday, it's January 26th. We are in that new master topic, that started on Saturday, so it is great to be with you. If this is your very first time joining me, I want to say thank you. And of course, welcome. If you're coming back after being here before, well, of course, thank you, but welcome back. I always appreciate people that enjoy the quality of the content I produce and want to make it more a part of their lives. All right, guys, without any further ado, I do want to let you know that you can check out believemeachieve.com after the show is over to get my short form, long form, and other forms of content, including reels and articles and so much more. And if you're thirsty, feel free to go grab yourself something like a water, a snack, fruit, whatever it is, healthy or not, that's totally up to you. Without any further ado, guys, let's go ahead and kick this show off. All right, everyone. So this is Inspirations for Your Life. It's Monday, and we have a great show, Unity versus Division, how ego splits friend groups, teams, and communities. This is Series 5, Show 5, Episode 3. And again, hello, everyone, and welcome back to Inspirations for Your Life, the daily motivational show where clarity replaces confusion and growth becomes intentional. Who am I? I'm your host. I'm John C. Morley, serial entrepreneur. It is always such a privilege, a pleasure, and honor to be with you guys every time I'm here live or every time I produce content for you guys. It's great to be here. I'm also, as I said, a video producer, podcast host, a graduate student. And it's great to be with you guys. Also a keynote speaker. And of course, guys, a passionate lifelong learner. This show exists for one reason. You know what that is? To help you live, lead, and become and connect and be a better version of yourself without losing yourself in the noise, because there's a lot of noise around society, isn't there? Today's episode is called Unity versus Division, how ego splits friend groups, teams, and communities. And this is a conversation we need to have because most division doesn't start with hate. It starts with an ego, an insecurity, a silence. And then from there, well, it just gets ugly. All right. So let's get into it. If you need to get that snack, go get it. Come on back. Are we friends or quietly competing? Let me ask you something honestly. Are you part of a friend group or are you part of a low key competition? I think sometimes when we're in these groups and we compete, the friendship dynamic kind of takes a back burner. And if we're not careful, it can stay there permanently and never come back. Because, guys, a lot of groups don't fall apart from conflict. They fall apart from comparison. Yes, guys, they fall apart from comparison. When friends start watching each other instead of supporting each other, well, that's a problem. And I know a lot of people out there don't want to do that, but for some reason they're doing it. And they're like, oh, no, I didn't want to do that. But then, excuse me, they did that. That's the whole point that I want to make you guys aware of, a very, very important thing to be aware of. All right. And you might be saying to me, John, well, that doesn't happen to me. Well, maybe it doesn't. But I still think it's important that you become aware of, what's happening, why things are happening, how things are making changes in your life. I mean, that's the important thing. If you can be aware of those things, then maybe you can change your life. Okay. But again, it does not happen, guys, overnight. And I'll tell you that sometimes we get lost in all this noise around our universe, right? It happens and we don't know why it happens, but we know it happens. And then by the time we realize it might be too late to actually do anything. So we're like, oh my gosh, what am I supposed to do now, right? It's about supporting each other. And I think sometimes we miss the boat on that because we're so caught up in our own lives that we don't do anything, that we decide, well, hey, I don't need to do this. And really, you do need to do this. All right. I want to tell you that really, you do need to do this. And you have to be understanding that what you're working on is about you becoming a better version of yourself. And if you can't become a better version of yourself, how can you ever help others? Right? That's an important thing to know. Is how this works and how the dynamic can affect you. And I think the dynamics of our life, they're probably changing a lot more than many years past. We've got technology that's morphing, and we got people that are, well, let's say only digitally social. They don't want to do anything in real life. And I think that becomes a huge problem for people. So, ladies and gentlemen, when success feels awkward instead of celebrated, that's when we got to step back. That's when we have to say, wait a minute. And I've had those questions. I say, just because we can doesn't mean we should. And that's a real hard dynamic for a lot of people to learn. How do we embrace that? How? And it comes down to going back to your core values. Your core values. Your core values are interesting, but your core values are what make you do what you do every day. Okay. I think that's an important piece that many people don't realize. And I think that's a very important thing to understand, is that it is about those things. And maybe you get lost with that. And maybe you're saying to me, and you're saying, well, how do I handle that? And you might say, John, well, I don't know how you handle that. And so maybe you're going to say to me, John, I don't know what I'm supposed to do because I'm getting mixed messages. That's important. All right. That's very important to understand. And maybe you're going to say to me, hey, John, it doesn't actually work the way you expect it to work. Okay. Maybe not. And I will tell you that because people don't get the concept that they're currently living within, right? And I think the reason that happens is because, well, let's face it, they get stuck in this, they get stuck in this way. And then this way says, well, gee, what am I supposed to do? And then the way doesn't get out of the way for you to do anything. And they're like, oh my gosh, well, how do I do things? How do I become that better version of myself? And I know that that's a very hard thing for a lot of people. They don't realize, how being silent is actually still making a move. So doing nothing is still doing something, right? As I said, when success feels awkward, instead of celebrated, we got to back up and say, wait a minute, what am I doing? What am I being a part of, right? Those are very important questions that we need to ask ourselves. When wins are met with silence instead of joy, I know sometimes that turns resentment, but it's not about turning resentment. It's about how can we embrace the world to become a better place. Yeah, I know. That's a hard one for a lot of people, right? It's a hard one because people don't necessarily know what they don't know, right? They don't understand that concept. They don't understand the fact that, if I'm happy, you should be happy too. And when you're happy, I'm going to be happy because of your being happy. But a lot of people they miss this whole point. And the point is that people don't think they can do it the right way. All right. And the reason this is because we're eluding ourselves. Okay. And so if we believe one thing, but it's not true, and we live our whole life on that basis, but now our core values are being, how can I say, they're being compromised. Well, that's a big problem. That affects our direction, right? And guys, that's not unity. That is rivalry. Okay. Um, Wearing a smile is not something that everybody does every single day. Why? I think it's because people, again, get stuck. And they get stuck. And then when they're so hard stuck, they become even more frustrated that they don't want to do anything in life. Right? That's a really okay. That's important. All right. And I know what you're saying to me, John. I know you're saying, well, John, I'm busy. I got my family, I got my life, I got my job. I get it. But you see, these are only small parts of your life. They're not everything. We have to balance everything. So we have to balance if we're doing sports, relationships, business. We have to balance everything. So even though your family is very important to you, your relationship is very important to you, it's one part of your life. It's a big part, but there are other parts too that need to have their dynamic. And when we don't give those pieces the true dynamic that they deserve, well, our life feels like it falls on deaf ears, right? Them versus you mentality, right? Energy destroys groups fast when we say them versus you. Why aren't we all just working together in a group? Why are we all about them versus me or you or he or she? Why are we doing that? Why are we playing this game? Why are we trying to say, we're better than them? Why can't we work together for the greater good of all concerned? That's like the multi-billion-dollar question I love to ask people, but I never get a truthful answer. I basically get told, well, John, it's just the way it is. Well, it doesn't have to be that way. Ladies and gentlemen, the moment a group splits into I'm with them, not you, energy trust starts leaking. I'm with them, not with you. That's a bold move to say that, first of all. And not only is it rude and disrespectful, it starts to erode not just your trust in the group, but it starts to compromise everything maybe the group was formed on. And then it becomes these cliche cliques, right? You know the ones I mean, like from high school or grammar school, right? These cliques. And nobody planned for these cliques to happen, but they do. And when they do, it's like there's no way to go back and say, how do we undo this? How do we prepare something, right? Think about it. I think a lot of people get confused. Okay. And it's okay. And the reason I say it's okay is because in your life, guys, it becomes about that. Okay. And maybe you're going to say to me, John, like, this doesn't make a lot of sense. Okay. Maybe you're wondering why something is a certain way. Maybe. But then maybe you're not, right? What I think is that sometimes um, we just fall out of something, right? Sometimes the way you are changes in life. Does that make sense? If we can understand that, then maybe we can realize how our future has changed. How has it changed? How is it different from yesterday? And I'll say it's different from yesterday because it just is. It just is. And that's something that many people don't understand. They don't necessarily get what it's about. They think they get it. But then they go through this hiatus and say, okay, how can I be different? Right. But by being different, they alienate not only themselves, but also the rest of the group. Now, group chats go quiet, right? When things like this happen, like I said, when we erode that trust, side conversations tend to pop up, right? And people start choosing alliances instead of solutions. And I think that's a huge, big no-no. All right. Um, right. And maybe you're saying to me, John, it's not about what I think today. It's about the feeling I get going forward, right? And I think that's a very interesting way of thinking about it, right? Um, it's interesting because we don't necessarily get what that is. And then we're left to feel that maybe we're on the wrong track. Okay. Maybe we're on the wrong track. Does that ever happen to you? Does that make sense to anybody? Maybe you've asked yourself certain questions and maybe you just can't figure out why something is a certain way, right? And that can be a very interesting thing, right? It could be a very interesting thing that maybe you're clueless about. And that one thing could change everything in your life. Let's think of this for one moment. Let's pretend that if one thing changed in your life, it would change everything. Maybe you believe something was a certain way, but then you suddenly found out or you learned it was something different. And now it's different. Does that make sense? And I think if we could just pretend that a premise changed, how would that affect your life, right? How would it affect your life? How would it affect your life today? And if you're saying to me, John, it's not going to affect anything, I'm going to tell you you're wrong because it is going to affect something. When we change a core belief, right, about something we've thought about for a long time, and now we suddenly take that, it's like we've taken all the legs off a chair, or even two legs off of, even taking one leg of a chair would cause it to collapse, right? It's that kind of thing, right? Maybe it's something that you'd say to me, John, I don't know. Maybe you're going to say that's impossible. But I'm here to tell you guys, it's not impossible. Think about one thing that you believe that's true. Okay. Now let's pretend that it changes. I think that if I suddenly gave you, let's say, a definition about something, and you knew your whole life this is what it was about, but now it's changed, that's going to affect who you are and the premises you operate from. And we talk about what happens when groups erode. A group suddenly becomes not connected anymore. It becomes about positioning. Now you get things like silent flex wars, creating all kinds of factions. The most division isn't loud, guys. It is subtle. It's that flex that wasn't necessary. The story told a little too strategically. The success shared without humility. These silent flex wars turn friends into factions. Now, you might be saying, John, what is a faction? I knew you were going to ask me that. So, a faction is a smaller, often contentious group within a large organization, political party, or society, united by shared interests or goals that differ from the majority. For example, let's say there was a group formed on, let's say, healthy habits for students. And that's what the whole group is formed around. But now there's 2 or 3 people in the group that suddenly believe that healthy is only good if it can be cheaper. And they're secretly plotting and telling everyone that, that's what we stand for. We're the real nutrition people, not like 3 or 4 people. And you got 50 people in the group, and now you're like creating this whole division. And now you're getting people that are not supporting the group because it's like you're forming your own group that isn't a group. It's nuts. So as I said, these silent flex wars turn friends into factions and teammates into rivals overnight, guys. Every community faces a loyalty test. I don't care whether it's a neighborhood. I don't care whether it's a work, whether it's volunteers in an organization. It happens. Every group, every team, every community eventually hits a roadblock, a moment where loyalty is tested. And are you going to stay loyal, or are you going to just do what you want to do? Not loyalty to a person, loyalty to principles. And what I like to call these guys is loyalty to core values. Okay? Loyalty to core values. Does that make sense? I hope it does. And if that makes sense, then maybe we need to guard our principles very well. And that might be something that you're wrestling with. Okay? Just maybe. And if you're telling me, John, it doesn't, I'm going to tell you to step back and let me know. Because things in your life, when the core principles, when the primary legs of the chair get pulled out from with under you, it doesn't support anymore. Will we choose honesty or comfort? Will we choose growth or will we choose an ego? Right? Unity or being right. That moment defines everything that comes next. Identity built on others shrinks you. I belong to this creator. I'm with this coach. I follow this leader, right? Here's the truth. When your identity is built around someone else, you shrink yourself. You stop thinking independently. You stop growing freely. You stop becoming who you're meant to be. Unity should expand you, not make you smaller. So take this information and let it grow you. Let it be a part of you. Stand culture versus self-respect. There's a difference between admiration and attachment. And when loyalty turns into identity, self-respect starts disappearing. You don't need to defend someone else's mistakes, basically to feel connected. You don't need to attack others to prove allegiance. That's not unity. That's insecurity. How leaders accidentally create division is a problem. Leaders don't always divide intentionally. Sometimes it's favoritism. Sometimes it's silence. Sometimes it's rewarding loyalty over truth. But when people feel ranked instead of valued, division becomes inevitable. Real leadership doesn't collect followers, guys. It builds trust. Gossip is cheap. Team building is the key. Let's be honest. Gossip feels like bonding because it avoids vulnerability, but it's just a disguise. But gossip isn't communication. It's fear. Fear of honest conversation, fear of confrontation, fear of accountability, and it always costs more than it pays. Before picking sides, ask these questions. Before you jump in someone else's drama, ask yourself, is this my issue to solve? Am I reacting or responding? Will this choice bring clarity or chaos? Because picking sides without context creates damage you can't undo. Healthy debates versus disrespect. Disachievement isn't devotion, but disrespect disguised as honesty is. Healthy debates leave room for dignity. Disrespect needs dominance. Know the difference. Supporting friends without co-signing harm. Supporting someone doesn't mean defending every decision they make. Real support tells the truth. Real care holds standards. Real love doesn't enable harm. If your loyalty costs your integrity, it's too expensive. Unity without becoming a... And unity does not mean self-abandonment. You can be kind and firm, loving and boundaried, connected without being controlled. Healthy unity respects individuality. Why us versus them feels powerful? Division feels powerful because it simplifies complexity, but it also freezes growth. And when you define yourself by opposition, you stop evolving. Growth requires curiosity, not enemies. And what real unity looks like, real unity isn't loud, guys. It's coordinated. It's purpose-driven. It's mutually respectable. It's group moving in the same direction, even with different roles. Orbiting versus building. Some groups aren't building. They're just orbiting around, hanging out, talking, eventing. But without shared purpose, proximity doesn't become progress. How jealousy starts. One win, no conversation, a lot of assumptions. That's all it takes, guys. Jealousy grows. The mature flex. Here's the real flex. I refuse to be weaponized against people I care about. That's emotional intelligence. That's leadership. That's growth. When to leave instead of fix. Not every divided space is yours to heal. Sometimes leaving is self-respect, not failure. And peace is not quitting. It's choosing alignment. Why real leaders, guys, refuse division. Strong leaders don't allow their name to become a badge. They don't need sides. They don't need tribes. They don't need loyalty tests. They build environments, not gangs. Conflict, ladies and gentlemen, rules for friendship. That's adult friendship. Adults don't avoid conflict, they handle it. Direct conversations, clear boundaries, no secret alliances. That's how trust survives. Thanks so much for joining me on the show tonight, Inspiration for Your Life. I know we ran a little bit over tonight, but had a lot of great things to share with you. Do check out BelieveMeAchieve.com for more of my amazing, inspiring creations. Catch you real soon.